Hi, it's nice to be with you today. I have some slides to share. So this is a talk on support for diverse students. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Jimenez. I'm a full professor at Texas A&M University in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. My work is in computer architecture. Specifically, I apply machine learning to microarchitecture. I have focused on improving branch prediction, which is technology that enables improved performance and energy efficiency in pipeline processors. I also work on cache management. So I'm known for applying perceptron learning to branch prediction. I made the first contribution in that field about 20 years ago. If you've used a recent AMD machine, you have used a branch predictor that uses my research. Oracle and IBM also sell machines that use perceptron-based prediction. And through a contracting relationship, I designed the branch predictors in the Samsung Exynos M processors that are used in the popular Samsung Galaxy S7, 8, 9, 10, and 20 mobile phones. I regularly publish in the top computer architecture conferences with my small group of students in my postdoc at Texas A&M. I've also done a lot of service for the community, organizing conferences and workshops, serving on the top program committees. I served as program chair for the HPCA conference. I chaired the IEEE Technical Committee on Computer Architecture, or TCCA. I'm currently the diversity chair and conferences chair for TCCA. I say yes to too many things, and I'll be doing more service work this year. So that's who I am. I'll tell you about how I got here. A lot of it has to do with luck in terms of meeting the right people at the right time. I'll mention a few of them, but there are many people who have helped me along my way. So I was born in Texas to a Mexican-American family. My father was a doctor, my mom was a nurse. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. As a kid, I wasn't the best student, but when I was about 13 years old, I started getting into computers and found that I had a talent for programming. I first started coding in BASIC, but quickly moved on to assembly language. I wasn't really sure I wanted to go to university. My parents and a good friend of mine encouraged me to go to college. This friend of mine was a professor at the University of Texas at San Antonio. I talked to him about my interest in computers, and he strongly encouraged me to go to university and major in computer science. His name was Raman Gilani. I was very lucky that I met him. That was 33 years ago. My parents also saw the great value in higher education and encouraged me to go to university. So I did, and that started my career in computer science. So at UTSA, I studied computer science. I took computer organization with a legendary professor named Hugh Menard. He recognized my talent and mentored me. I really admired him, and I wanted to be a professor just like him. I was very lucky that I met him. I got through my bachelor's degree through a scholarship program called Research Careers for Minority Scholars, during which I worked on a project with Dr. Menard. I decided to get a master's degree at UTSA to continue learning about computer science. I did my master's thesis with Dr. Menard too. I decided I wanted to be a professor. So I applied for the PhD program at the University of Texas at Austin. I got in. The first year was very tough. Everyone there was really smart and the classes were hard. I made some bad grades. In my first semester, I took a class with Edgar Dijkstra. You might have heard of him. I was very lucky that I met him. In my second semester, I took a class on artificial intelligence with Professor Risto Mikulainen. He's a neural networks guy, so he made the class mostly about neural networks instead of artificial intelligence. I was very lucky I met him. Things weren't going real well with me, so I took a break from my studies and took a research position at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. It turned out that I had learned in Risto Mikulainen's class exactly what I needed to know to solve a problem that they had there. They said, here's this problem we have. We need to be able to do such and such. And I said, oh, I know how to do that. Neural networks. So I worked there for a couple of years writing software to automate the design of prosthetic devices using neural networks, and I published a few papers. I wanted to get back. I wanted to go back to UT and finish my doctoral studies, but I wasn't sure that they would take me back. I emailed Edgar Dijkstra. I asked him for some advice, and he encouraged me to reapply, and he gave me some hints about how I might go about doing that. So I did, and I got back in. I spent some time looking for an advisor. I took a class in parallel programming with Professor Calvin Lin. I was very lucky to have met him. He took me on as a research assistant and a doctoral advisee, despite my bad grades. I started making good grades. We worked on a few ideas that didn't work out, and then a few that did. And the first one was applying perceptron learning to branch prediction. I published a few papers and then defended my dissertation. Then it was time to get a job. Like most folks from Mexican-American families and most folks from Texas in general, I didn't want to go far from home. Just moving from San Antonio to Austin, a distance of only 80 miles, was a huge step for me. But I took the advice of my fellow graduate students who were much more, they had a wider perspective than I did. And so I applied for jobs all over the place. I had offers from low-ranked universities in Texas and from better places in other states. I settled on taking the job as an assistant professor at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. I spent several years there, published a lot of good papers, got tenure, but I couldn't take the weather. It snows a lot in New Jersey. That first winter there was just brutal. I couldn't take it. So I moved back to San Antonio and took a job as an associate professor at the University of Texas at San Antonio. It was great to be home. I grew my career in my research group, published some more good papers. Eventually, I was promoted to full professor, and I became department chair. I went to a lot of conferences. I presented a lot of good papers. One conference I like to go to a lot was PLDI. At PLDI, I met Lawrence Rauschberger. We had a nice long dinner together talking about all sorts of things and beginning a long friendship. I was very lucky to have met him. Things got political and weird at UTSA, and it was hard to make progress in my research career. Lawrence Rauschberger encouraged me to apply for an open position at Texas A&M, where he was a professor. So I did. I got the job, and now I'm at Texas A&M University. Funny story, I applied for the department chair position last year at Texas A&M, and I didn't get it. My excellent colleague Scott Schaefer got the job. It turned out I dodged a bullet. It turns out this is not the right year to be a department chair with the pandemic. It makes the job much less fun and much harder. So I'll talk a little about my approach to diversity. So I've been lucky in my career. I haven't had many of the obstacles that diverse students and faculty face. And I recognize my good fortune, so I try to help other people with their careers. So I'm Mexican American, but I was fortunate to be raised in a family that really valued education. I never had to explain to my father why I wanted a PhD or argue with him about furthering my education rather than starting working on a real job. He was raised poor in Mexico, but he went on to go to medical school and become a surgeon. So I benefited from his understanding of the value of education. But I understand the culture and how parochial it can be, and I take that into account as a mentor for other Hispanic students. I put a high priority on diversity in my research program. I actively recruit women and minorities into my research group. In fact, the majority of my former students are women. I've graduated or I'm advising 7 women PhD students and a few more masters. I have advised several Hispanic PhD and master's students. I've learned how to help my diverse students make it through. For several of these students, I've observed there's a very thin line that separates failure from success. For these students, I can think of several moments where they were close to giving up due to unfortunate circumstances, either in their research or in their personal lives. I could have given up on them. I could have taken on other students. Honestly, I could have taken on male students of different ethnicities who have more certain successful research outcomes and come with less personal baggage and family issues. But I didn't do that. I encouraged my diverse students. I showed them what they were capable of. I helped them. Maybe I helped them a little too much. I spent a lot of time coding and writing papers alongside my students. And I've seen them go on to success. Maybe I'm too sentimental, but I have a really hard time telling a diverse student that they should go somewhere else to look for an advisor. I've been doing this long enough to see some of my students, now successful in their careers, help other students from diverse populations. So what kind of advice could I give to diverse students? So I participate in and I've organized mentoring workshops for women and minority students and early faculty. These workshops can make a big difference when people come together and realize there are others like them trying to make their way through this white male-dominated field. The networking opportunities are very valuable and the talks can be helpful. I encourage you to seek out and attend these events. Go to at least one. Some people find they're less useful, but some people really get a lot out of them. There's these general diversity conferences like Grace Hopper and Grad Cohort for Women. And there's Grad Cohort URMD and TAPIA. URMD is Underrepresented Minorities and Disabled. And so these are great events that you should attend at least once, and sometimes you can attend them multiple times and get a lot out of them. And it's also fun to travel to these places. Well, with the pandemic going on right now, it's not clear when that'll start again, but hopefully next year there'll be more travel to interesting locations for these kinds of things. Okay, so what do you want starting off as a graduate student or continuing your career as a graduate student? You want to find a welcoming environment. You want your research life to be fun and enriching. Research should be fun. You want to find an advisor, a good advisor. Finding a good advisor is very important. It can be more important than finding a good school or a good research topic. You want to find a good school, but a good school without a good advisor doesn't help you very much. There's many aspects to finding a good advisor that you can find described in other mentoring talks and stuff you can find on the internet. But as diverse students, maybe the most important thing to find in an advisor is someone who seems to understand who you are and where you come from. Maybe how your upbringing and family shaped who you are and how that might be different from the advisor's experience. You want to find someone who will encourage you while prompting you to be the best researcher you can be. It's also very important to keep in touch with your advisor. At least once a week, there should be some kind of contact, preferably a meeting where you discuss what you're doing and get some good feedback from your advisor. If you get stuck on something, maybe you got a bug in your program or you just can't figure out the next step in the research process, communicate with your advisor. Don't just stay stuck on a problem for hours and hours, days and days. Talk to your advisor. Maybe talk to a fellow graduate student, but definitely communicate to get past that stuck feeling. Also recognize that failure is part of the job of a graduate student. Don't avoid it. You will fail a lot until you succeed. Embrace the failure, learn from it. Talk to your advisor about it. Don't be ashamed to talk to your advisor about your failures. You need to be communicating with them anyway. I guarantee that your advisor has failed many, many times. To get to any level of success that your advisor has gotten to, they have failed many, many times, and they completely understand. You also need a support group of peers. Everyone does. These are fellow students who can support you, and you can help support also. They don't all have to look like you, although it's good to have people like that in your support group. Well, there aren't that many of them. That's why women, there aren't that many women, there aren't that many minorities in computer science and engineering. So you won't have the opportunity to find that many people that look like you. That's okay. In any event, you want to make connections with the world of researchers who come from all kinds of different backgrounds, foreign students, American students, students from all over the place. If you find yourself being depressed or hating your work, that's normal for a couple of weeks, but if it goes on too long, maybe it's time for a change. So don't go too long hating graduate school. Talk to your advisor. If he or she doesn't have a helpful attitude and that bothers you that they don't have a helpful attitude, maybe it's time for a new advisor. You don't want to switch advisors too often. Once is more than enough, but sometimes you do need that change to find a more welcoming, more encouraging advisor. Maybe it's time to change research topics. I was going to study circuit complexity. That didn't work out, so I went with my advisor Calvin Lin, and we were going to do compilers, and that didn't quite work out. And then we started doing architecture. He didn't know anything about architecture, but there were some other architects in the department who helped us, and so I was successful in architecture. And now that's what I do. So changing topics isn't that terrible. You remember the other topics, and you become more diverse in terms of your research background. As a last resort, I guess you could change schools. I've seen that work out for some students, including some students that I fired when I was a more hot-headed assistant professor. And now those students are doing well. But I don't recommend it. It might help, might work. Changing your own attitude can often help. Is there something you could be doing better, something you could think about the work differently? But seek advice, talk to your friends, talk to students, talk to other professors, talk to your advisor. Don't fall through the cracks. You should be fully funded throughout your PhD studies. Don't let yourself ever have to pay for your tuition, your fees, or your monthly stipend. If you're doing that, then there's something going wrong. Get to know the administrative personnel in charge of graduate studies at your university. Your advisor can help with a lot of things. A graduate advisor can help with a lot of things. The administrative personnel in charge of graduate studies, they know all the rules. They know the milestones that you're supposed to achieve. They know what papers need to be signed and so forth. So get to know them. Visit with them frequently so that you can make progress in your research career as a graduate student. Just in general, some advice for students. Right now, things are really weird because of the pandemic. So if you're feeling alone, feeling depressed, reach out to a friend or the phone or Zoom or whatever. Just talking to people. Right now, it's hard to even talk to people because they're not around. But make that effort to reach out and talk to somebody if you're feeling weird or feeling sad. Well, if you're feeling good, you should also reach out to a friend because you still need it. You still need that contact with people. And maybe they need it too. We're all here to help each other. So reach out to a friend, family member, a professor, and we'll make it through this weird time. So that's my talk. I hope that you got something out of it. I understand that there will be a question and answer session that I'll be able to attend remotely during the conference. Right now I'm recording this in July. I hope things aren't much worse in August. So again, I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you have a good time at KDD. See you later.